Hello, I'm Dave Speakman. Today we've got Gaz Hughes Trio in recording their new album, so I just thought I'd go through the way that we're miking it up. So we're recording everything simultaneously in the room at once, because obviously it's a jazz trio, so they want to play live. So just having a look at his drum kit. Gaz is actually endorsed by Canopus, so he's got this lovely new kit. It's pretty cool. What size are the shells, Gaz?
18
Yeah. 18 by 14 for the bass drum. 14 by 14 for the floor tom. 12 by 8 for the tom.
14 by 5.5 maybe.
And then it's 14 by 5.5 on the snare. And he's using these Zildjian Constantinople cymbals, which are kind of a dry sound, really. Amazing cymbals. So the way that I've gone for miking the kit up for this, obviously there's no hole in the bass drum because it's a jazz kit, so he's playing like sort of a boppier sound. So we've got a Shure 52A on the bass drum. Snare drum, I'm using a Sennheiser 441. Now I've come from this side because Gaz plays open-handed quite a lot, so he ends up cross-sticking on both sides. So this is a better place essentially to put the snare microphone, because he's using the cross-stick on both sides, so just have to be careful with the placement for it. We've got a Neumann KM 184 underneath the snare, and the same on the hi-hats. It's another KM 184 on the hi-hats. And then on the toms, I'm using AKG 414s. That's not something that I would do on a rock thing, but on the jazz thing, because the way that Gaz has his toms tuned for this sort of music, the toms are quite high and they're quite melodic, really. He's kind of playing the melodies of the songs. And then for the overheads, I'm using Cole's 4038, and there's a room mic up here, which is like one of Toman's ribbon mics. I can't remember which model it is, but basically it's the same as a Cascade Fathead, but it's just the one that Toman make. It's amazing, actually. It's quite a cheap mic, but it's really, really good. I've got these panels up here to help with isolation, and then for double bass, Ed Harrison's playing double bass today. Got a U87 for the main thing, and then we're actually running him through his bass amp because that's how he's used to playing. So I've got a Telefunken M82 on the bass amp, and we're DIing him as well. Is the DI on his double bass. Coming around to the piano, Andre Baronek's playing piano today, phenomenal pianist. So we've got an AEA R88, I don't know whether you can see it, it's quite dark down here. It's an AEA R88, and I've kind of got that in over the main sort of strings of the piano. The main strings that are being played the majority of the time anyway. And then there's a Sennheiser MD421. This is a vintage one, but that's just pointing at the soundboard through the hole in the piano. And then there's a Rode K2 there, and that's just on the bottom end of the piano. And I do find that having these two mics and centering them, so this is panned left and right, the R88, because it's actually a stereo ribbon mic, and then these are panned to the center. So what I'm getting there as well is that the bass, the bottom end of the piano, is really well centered and really well grounded, so I don't end up with the bottom end being all over the place. I don't really want the bottom end swinging hard left or right, you know, I want it to be in the middle. So that's it really. So they're playing all together, and then I'm running some parallels on the SSL SiX as well. And I'll show you the setup upstairs as well. We're also doing another video this weekend with these acoustic panels from GIK, taking them out of the room to hear the difference that makes to the recording. I'll put a link to that video here. It might not be up yet, but when it's up, it'll be there. So the way that I've routed things up here, essentially we're coming from the preamps and then onto my patch bay, which is here. So you can watch a video about how I did the patch bay here, how I routed the SSL SiX to it, that is. So I've put the piano, the R88 is going to these two preamps, which are AML 1073s, phenomenal preamps. I'm definitely going to get more of those. There's nothing being done to them. There's a little bit of top end has been put on the EQ, and I've got a high pass at 50 Hertz, but I'm not compressing the piano. It doesn't need it at all. So the bass drum, the top snare mic and the bottom snare mic are coming into these 4710 Universal Audio preamps, and I am compressing the top snare mic very, very, very slightly. It's only just to catch the very occasional big hits that Gareth does. The main thing really that I've been doing, the thing that's new for me, is using this SSL SiX. So I've got a bass DI coming from here. Now what's great about the 4710 actually, so just to diverge slightly, is that the inserts are always active. So the insert sends are always active. So I'm taking the insert sends from the kick drum and the double bass and feeding them into channels 3 and 5 on the SSL SiX in mono. You have to unplug the other ones. That's why it was a good idea if you have an SSL SiX to label up the cabling if you get it, because you're constantly having to unplug and plug things back in. It's just not really a drawback, it's just the way it is. So I'm using channels 1 and 2 of the SSL SiX to record the cols, the overheads. I'm going to do a separate video about compressing and how the compressors work on the cols. I'll link that here. And then these are all then, so I'm taking the insert sends from these and feeding them into the line inputs of this audio interface. And then I'm also taking the main mix as a whole and feeding that into 2 separate line inputs. That is then being compressed with the master bus compressor. So I'm compressing the overheads, the kick, and the DI'd double bass together to get a parallel compression, and that's really gluing the sound together. I'm really enjoying the way that that's sounding. I'll show some examples of how that sounds now.